December 10th, 1968. Tokyo. Four employees of Japan Trust Bank are driving a Nissan Cedric through the quiet streets of Fuchu. In the trunk, they're carrying 294 million yen in cash. That's about $26 million in today's money. The destination? Toshiba's factory, just 200 meters away. The cargo? Winter bonuses for 4,525 factory workers. In 3 minutes, all of it will vanish. A man in a police uniform, a white motorcycle, a road flare, and the largest heist in Japanese history will be complete. The investigation that follows will involve 170,000 police officers, cost 3 times the amount stolen, and produce exactly 0 arrests. 57 years later, nobody knows who did it. Welcome to Japan's perfect crime. Or was it? Before we dive into what happened that December morning, we need to understand 1968 Japan. This wasn't the orderly, camera-filled society we know today. The country was in chaos. Student protests erupted across universities. Left-wing movements clashed with police in the streets. Just 2 weeks before our heist, someone bombed a train on the Yokosuka line. Between April and August of that same year, an anonymous extortionist sent 9 threatening letters to the Tama Agricultural Co-op, promising explosions and arson. The police were stretched thin, responding to demonstrations, bomb threats, and political violence. This atmosphere of fear and instability? It's crucial to understanding how someone pulled this off. And then there's the money itself. Why were bank employees driving around Tokyo with nearly 300 million yen in cash? In Japan, winter bonuses are a sacred tradition dating back to the Edo period. Shopkeepers gave employees summer bonuses so they could buy nice clothes and visit family during the Bon Festival. The winter bonus was a reward for a year's hard work. By 1968, every major company followed this tradition. And in an era before electronic transfers became standard, cash deliveries were routine. Insurance covered the risk, so nobody thought twice about it. That is, until someone realized this created the perfect opportunity. Now let's talk about December 10th. The Nissan Cedric left Japan Trust Bank's Kokubunji branch at 9:15 in the morning. 4 employees were inside. The route was simple. Straight shot to Toshiba's Fuchu factory. No more than a 5-minute drive under normal circumstances. But the employees weren't relaxed. They had good reason to be nervous. 4 days earlier, on December 6th, someone had sent a threatening letter to their bank manager. The message was specific and terrifying. Deliver 3 million yen to a designated location or the bank would be blown up. The police sent 50 officers to investigate. Nobody found anything, but everyone remained on edge. So when a motorcycle police officer blocked their path behind Fuchu prison, the employees didn't question it. The driver rolled down his window. "What's wrong, officer?" The man in uniform spoke quickly. "There's been an explosion at your bank manager's house. We have information that someone may have planted dynamite in this vehicle. I need to check immediately." Remember, these men had just received a bomb threat 4 days ago. Their manager's house blown up? It made perfect sense. They exited the vehicle without hesitation. The officer got on his hands and knees and crawled under the Nissan. The employees watched, hearts pounding. Moments later, he rolled out from under the car, shouting, "It's going to explode. Run, get back." Smoke began billowing from underneath the vehicle. Flames appeared. The 4 men sprinted away, expecting the car to detonate at any second. The officer jumped into the driver's seat and roared off down the street, ostensibly to move the vehicle away from buildings and pedestrians. The employees watched their car disappear around a corner. One of them, the driver, felt a wave of admiration. "What a brave officer," he thought, risking his life to save us and protect the neighborhood. They waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. No explosion. The driver walked back to where the car had been parked. On the ground, he found the remains of a road flare, still smoking. He looked more carefully at the motorcycle the officer had been riding. It was painted white, but the paint job was crude, amateur. This wasn't an official police vehicle. It took him another few minutes to put it together. There was no bomb. There had never been a bomb. They'd been robbed. Here's what makes this so fascinating. The entire operation, from the moment the fake officer stopped the car to the moment he drove away, took less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes to steal 294 million yen without firing a shot, without threatening anyone, without even raising his voice. Just a uniform, a story, and a road flare. By the time the police arrived on the scene, the robber had already switched vehicles twice. The Nissan was found abandoned. The money had been transferred to a stolen car, which was also abandoned, then transferred again to a third vehicle. After that, the trail went cold. The police response was unprecedented. This wasn't just a robbery. This was a national humiliation. Japan prided itself on its low crime rate, its orderly society, its respectful citizens. Someone had just made fools of 4 bank employees and walked away with enough money to buy 150 houses. The investigation became the largest in Japanese history. They distributed 780,000 copies of a composite sketch across the country. They compiled a list of 110,000 suspects. They assigned 170,000 police officers to the case. Think about that number, 170,000. That's more than the entire population of some cities. And the evidence? Oh, there was plenty of evidence. The thief left behind 120 pieces of it at the scene. The white motorcycle was a Yamaha, hastily repainted. There was a hunting cap, the road flare, a magnet, some rope. The police also found saliva on the postage stamps of the threatening letters. They determined the suspect's blood type was B. They collected fingerprints from the motorcycle, the letters, everything the thief had touched. They compared those prints against 6 million fingerprints on file. 6 million. Not a single match. But here's where it gets interesting. The evidence was almost too abundant. Every single item the thief left behind was a mass-produced, with everyday object that you could buy at any store in Tokyo. The motorcycle, a common model. The cap, sold in hundreds of shops. The road flare, standard issue, available everywhere. It was the late 1960s. Japan's economic miracle was in full swing. Mass production meant mass anonymity. You couldn't trace any of this stuff back to a specific buyer. And then there was the handwriting analysis. The letters sent to the Tama Co-op between April and August matched the letters sent to the bank manager on December 6th. Same handwriting, same style, same threats of explosions. This suggested the robber had been planning for months, sending practice threats to see how police would respond, to learn their procedures, to gauge the level of fear a bomb threat could create. This wasn't some impulsive crime. This was rehearsed. 5 days after the robbery, on December 15th, police got their first major lead. A 19-year-old man, let's call him Boy S, was found dead in his home. Potassium cyanide poisoning. The cause of death was ruled suicide. Why was S a suspect? Well, he was a member of a local youth gang called the Tachikawa Group, known for robberies. He knew the Fuchu area intimately. He had no alibi for December 10th. And here's the kicker. His father was a motorcycle police officer. S would have grown up around police motorcycles, police uniforms, police procedures. He would have known exactly how to impersonate an officer. But there were problems with the S theory. Big problems. His handwriting didn't match the threatening letters. His blood type wasn't B. And when police searched his home and questioned his family, they found no trace of the money. 2 glasses were on the table where he died. Only one contained poison. No fingerprints were found on the cyanide bottle. His parents refused to explain what had happened. They simply buried their son and went silent. On December 21st, police released a composite sketch that looked remarkably like S. The public began to whisper, the son of a police officer. Of course, he would have had inside knowledge. But the lead detective on the case, Haizuka Hachibe, made a stunning announcement. S is innocent. How could he be so sure? Because S had been in juvenile detention from April through August, exactly when the practice-threatening letters were being sent to the Tama Co-op. Unless S had an accomplice who sent the letters while he planned the robbery, he couldn't have been the mastermind. Still, many investigators believed S was involved somehow. Perhaps he was an accomplice who panicked after the robbery. Perhaps he knew who the real thief was and couldn't live with the knowledge. Perhaps someone silenced him. The truth died with him. His family never spoke publicly about the case. Then came the tragedy of Man A. In December 1969, exactly 1 year after the robbery, the Mainichi Shimbun newspaper identified a 26-year-old former taxi driver as resembling the composite sketch. The police arrested him on an unrelated minor charge. This was a pretext. What they really wanted was to interrogate him about the heist. The media descended on him like vultures. They published his name, his photo, details of his life. Within hours, everyone in Japan knew his face. He was the prime suspect in the crime of the century. The next day, witnesses came forward with an alibi. Man A had been at a job interview on the morning of December 10th. Proctored, documented, impossible to fake. He was released immediately, but the damage was irreversible. His name had been dragged through the mud on national television. He lost his job. His family fell apart. Journalists followed him everywhere. Strangers recognized him on the street. The National Association of Lawyers lodged a formal protest against the police for abuse of power. Man A tried to rebuild his life. He struggled for decades, working odd jobs, moving from place to place, trying to escape the shadow of an accusation that had been proven false. In 2008, nearly 40 years after that terrible day in December 1969, he took his own life at home. He was 65 years old. The perfect crime had claimed another victim. And he wasn't the only one. 2 police officers committed suicide during the investigation, overwhelmed by the stress and the pressure to solve the case. Boy S was dead. Man A would eventually die by his own hand. The cost of this robbery, in human terms, was staggering. And the actual thief? Still out there somewhere, presumably alive and free. Let's talk about why this investigation failed so spectacularly. First, there was an internal power struggle. Normally, robbery cases fall under the jurisdiction of the 3rd Division of Japan's police force. These detectives specialize in theft. They understand the psychology of thieves, the patterns, the methods. But because this case was so high profile, police chiefs transferred it to the 1st Division. Homicide detectives. These investigators were brilliant at solving murders, but they didn't have the expertise in robbery that the case required. It was like asking a heart surgeon to perform brain surgery. They're both doctors, but it's not the same thing. Second, the composite sketch turned out to be a disaster. Several witnesses later admitted they hadn't actually seen the suspect's face clearly. They'd been far away, or the suspect had been wearing a helmet, or they'd only caught a glimpse. But in the pressure to produce something, anything, the sketch was created and distributed to 780,000 locations across Japan. By 1974, the police officially retracted it. Too late. The damage was done. How many real suspects had they ignored because they didn't match the sketch? How many innocent people like Man A had their lives destroyed because they happened to look like a drawing that was based on faulty memories? Third, this was 1968. No DNA testing, no surveillance cameras, no digital records. If you paid for something in cash, there was no trace. If you walked down a street, nobody filmed you. Privacy was absolute. In some ways, this was the last moment in history when a crime like this could succeed. But was it really a perfect crime? Let's examine that claim. Because the more you look at the details, the more you realize this thief got incredibly lucky. The motorcycle he rode had a rain canopy loosely attached to the back seat. That tarp dragged along the ground as he drove. If a car had run over it, the sudden jerk could have thrown him off the bike, possibly injuring or killing him. He chose to commit the robbery behind Fuchu Prison, supposedly because it was a quiet, isolated area with few witnesses. But there were guards in the prison tower who had a perfect view of everything. Multiple witnesses saw him. The location wasn't isolated at all. The road flare was another gamble. What if it hadn't ignited properly? What if the smoke hadn't been convincing? What if one of the bank employees had been less gullible and inspected the underside of the car? The whole scheme depended on the employees believing the story instantly and without question. One skeptical person could have ruined everything. So was this a brilliant plan, or was the thief just a lucky idiot? The experts disagree. Manga author Watanabe Jun, who chronicled the case in his work Montage, believes the image of the perfect crime exists only because the case was never solved. If the thief had been caught, we'd see all the mistakes, all the flaws. We'd realize it was sloppy and improvised. The mystique comes from the mystery. But former detective Etu Shiro has a different take. He argues that despite the flaws, the crime required insider knowledge. Think about it. At that time of year, dozens of companies were transporting cash bonuses. Why target Toshiba's shipment specifically? Because the thief knew several key facts. First, the amount was enormous. Second, the security was surprisingly light, just 4 unarmed bank employees. Third, due to left-wing student demonstrations happening in central Tokyo, most police resources were concentrated downtown. The Tama area where Fuchu is located had limited officers available for rapid response. Someone had to know all of this. Someone had to understand the timing, the routes, the security protocols. Etu believes it wasn't one person. It was a team of 4 or 5 accomplices who split the money evenly. That would explain how the vehicle switches happened so smoothly. One person drives away in the Nissan, meets accomplice number 2 who has a stolen car ready. They transfer the money, abandon the Nissan. Accomplice 2 drives to a second location, meets accomplice 3 with another stolen vehicle, transfer again. By the time police are searching for the first stolen car, the money's already in the third vehicle, heading in a completely different direction. It's brilliant teamwork if true, but we'll never know. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The police know secrets about this case that have never been made public, specific details that only the real perpetrator would know. The exact way the road flare was ignited, a strange object found inside the aluminum cases that held the money. These details have been kept confidential for decades, presumably so that if someone ever confesses, police can verify whether they're telling the truth or just seeking attention. So far, nobody has come forward with that knowledge. Let's address the elephant in the room. What happened to the money? 294 million yen is a lot of cash. Even split 5 ways, that's nearly 60 million yen per person. You can't just walk into a store in 1968 and start spending that kind of money without raising suspicion. So how would you do it? Slowly. Very slowly. Maybe you hide the bulk of it and live off your normal income. Every few months, you pull out a bit of cash, claim you won it gambling or inherited it from a relative. You buy a house, but not a mansion. A car, but not a Ferrari. You live well, but not suspiciously well. Over decades, you spend it all. Nobody notices. By the time anyone might connect you to the robbery, the statute of limitations has expired. And that's exactly what happened. On December 10th, 1975, 7 years after the heist, the statute of limitations ran out. Japanese law at the time set a 7-year limit for prosecuting robbery. After that, even if the police found the thief and recovered the money, they couldn't press charges. The case was officially closed. Then in 1988, the civil statute of limitations expired. This meant the thief no longer had any financial liability either. If he wanted to, he could publish a book called I Stole 300 Million Yen, Here's How I Did It, and legally nobody could touch him. 40 years have passed since 1988. The thief, if he's still alive, would be in his 70s or 80s by now. He could tell his story without any legal repercussions. But the silence continues. Why? Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's worried about social stigma, about his family finding out. Maybe he enjoys the mystery. Or maybe, just maybe, the real thief isn't who we think at all. In 2018, someone posted a confession online. The website is called Let's Become Novelists, a platform for amateur writers. The post was titled, I'm the perpetrator of the 300 million yen incident. Over a month and a half, the anonymous author published his story in chapters, 80,000 characters in total. The narrative was detailed and compelling. According to this confession, the author's name was Shirota. He originally proposed the heist to boy S, but Shirota and S were in a love triangle with a woman named Kyoko. Eventually, Shirota and Kyoko decided to commit the crime together, and S bowed out. After Kyoko passed away, Shirota decided it was time to tell the truth. The post went viral. Hundreds of thousands of people read it. But when experts examined the confession, they were skeptical. There was nothing in the story that only the real perpetrator would know. No mention of the secret details police had kept confidential. No insider knowledge that couldn't have been gleaned from newspaper archives and published books. It read like a well-researched novel, which is exactly what it probably was. A creative writing exercise that happened to go viral. None of the experts who discussed the case in the Gendai Media Roundtable even bothered mentioning it. That tells you everything. So where does that leave us? With a lot of theories and very few facts. Some people believe Boy S did it and his suicide was a confession. Others think Man P, a former robber who used a similar scheme in 1955 and later moved to Hawaii, was behind it. There's a theory involving three brothers from a neighboring city who suddenly came into money. There's speculation about a real estate agent who couldn't explain his newfound wealth. And of course, there's the team theory, the idea that this was a coordinated effort by multiple people, which would explain the smooth vehicle switches and the lack of any single obvious suspect. What we do know is that this crime couldn't happen today. DNA evidence would have identified the culprit from the saliva on the stamps. Surveillance cameras are everywhere in modern Japan, tracking every street, every intersection, every building entrance. Digital money transfers have replaced cash deliveries. Even if you somehow managed to steal physical currency, spending it would be nearly impossible. Banks report large deposits. Stores have records. Your phone tracks your location. Privacy, the kind of absolute privacy that existed in 1968, is gone. But back then, in those final years before technology caught up with criminality, there was a window. A brief moment when mass production made evidence useless, when cash was king, when you could disappear into the crowd and never be found. The 300 million yen heist happened in that window. It was the perfect storm of preparation, opportunity, and timing. Or maybe it was just dumb luck. Maybe some guy had a half-baked idea, tried it on a whim, and couldn't believe it actually worked. Maybe he's been living in quiet terror ever since, afraid that one mistake will expose him. Maybe he spent all the money decades ago and now lives in a small apartment, watching documentaries about his own crime, laughing at all the theories, amazed that he got away with it. The truth is, we'll never know. The case is closed. The statute of limitations has expired. The witnesses are aging or dead. The physical evidence has been stored away in archives. Boy S is gone. Man A is gone. The police officers who committed suicide are gone. Even the Nissan Cedric that carried the money has probably been crushed and recycled into something else by now. All that's left is the story, the mystery, the tantalizing question, who did it? In the end, maybe that's the real legacy of the 300 million yen heist. Not the money, not the scheme, but the question itself. For 57 years, Japan has been asking. Detectives have devoted their careers to finding answers. Writers have filled thousands of pages with theories. Filmmakers have reimagined the crime over and over. And somewhere, someone knows the truth.